was fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Style that would align with a ring that size, a negative style, as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing pros are reacting to Jake Paul hinting at retirement after his shocking knockout loss to Anthony Joshua. Jake says once he's achieved his goals in boxing, he plans to walk away and pursue an NFL career, signaling a major shift in his athletic journey. Is this the end of Jake Paul in boxing, or just the start of something new?
NFL after this, like legitimately, just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you can go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.34.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then just being fast and win.
The boxing world reacted hard after the fight. One ex-IBF figure went nuclear, posting, "Jake Paul knocked out. His career is over. This bum is done." Former world champion Duke McKenzie took a more technical angle, pointing out how undersized Jake Paul was against Anthony Joshua. He said even when Jake tried to punch, he couldn't reach AJ properly, exposing the clear mismatch. McKenzie warned Jake should stop this now. Continuing in fights like this could be dangerous and seriously damage his boxing reputation.
Paul tried to throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, he'd miss. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. There's a Kung Fu guy who walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line, and I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would, and the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, the 75 million.
Another former fighter, Chael Sonnen, reacted bluntly to Jake Paul's shocking loss, posting that he was relieved to see Jake finally humbled. The reaction summed up how divided fans really are. Former UFC champion Michael Bisping went deeper, calling Anthony Joshua's performance a masterclass. Bisping explained how AJ's uppercuts and combinations badly injured Jake, leaving him no room to move. Even when Jake tried to run, he couldn't escape the punishment. Bisping stressed the damage was serious, especially to Jake's face, and warned he needs real time to recover before even thinking about fighting again. The fight made one thing clear: Jake Paul's limits show against top-tier opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? Yeah, a lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing, it's not MMA as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
The reactions keep getting harsher. One ex-user, Cabral's Finest, claimed Jake Paul was taken to the hospital with a suspected broken jaw, posting, "Bro was forced into early retirement." The post instantly went viral. Sean Jones focused on the reality of the fight, saying at least it wasn't rigged or scripted. He noted that even with Jake suffering serious damage, Anthony Joshua didn't need full power, suggesting it could have been much worse. Jones stressed the injury shows how brutal it is to step up against a world-class heavyweight. This wasn't entertainment. It was a harsh lesson in elite boxing reality.
But all those people who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged, like people said that this is a clown show, and they said this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring, will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as yet, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward, they're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we've seen here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul is awkward and he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th rounds, but then he started.
The backlash is getting louder. User Mir71 fired a blunt warning at Jake Paul after the loss, posting, "Do everyone a favor and don't return." Many hardcore boxing fans agree, saying the experiment has gone too far. Analyst Liam Goff raised serious concerns, warning that Jake Paul is in real danger after the brutal defeat to Anthony Joshua. According to Goff, Jake's boxing options are effectively closed for now due to severe injuries. A broken jaw and additional physical damage mean a long recovery, not a quick comeback. Goff stressed that any talk of future fights must stop until Jake fully heals. This isn't about momentum or hype anymore. It's about long-term health and survival in a sport that doesn't forgive mistakes.
When he had that face-off with Tank Davis, he was looking at a guy who was, 5-6 inches shorter than him and probably 60-70 pounds lighter, right? So he was probably looking at that thinking, yeah, you're a legit boxer, yeah, you hit very hard, but look how much bigger I am to you. Contrast that to him looking up at Anthony Joshua and realizing, oh my God, look at the size of you in comparison to me. That's a bit different. And I think with Jake Paul, it really dawned on him what's going on. But Jake Paul has to keep face. He has to stay essentially in that persona that, you know, I am the man, I'm going to win this, trying to sell a dream to a casual, a bit like what Eddie Hearn does, trying to sell the casual audience that this is going to be a real fight, quote unquote. It was a real fight. It's not scripted, but you know what I mean, that he's really in this fight. That's what he was trying to do. And he did that well up until fight night. Boy, did he fail miserably on fight night. Again, I give him credit. He doesn't need to box. He can choose an easier profession, as I say. But to go in and to run around the ring like that, that was something else entirely. I mean, he was doing his best Roadrunner impression in there. He was running around that ring from the minute that bell went. That was all he was trying to do. And listen, AJ's performance, I can critique it from a defensive point of view, that he got hit with some silly shots that he probably shouldn't have been hit with. He was trying to cut the ring off in a ring as big as that. It's not easy, all right? And furthermore, if you're in there with an opponent who purely just wants to survive, he's no interest in winning the fight. He just wants to go the rounds. People, you could be one of the most you could be a prime Mike Tyson, Bone Crusher Smith, prime example. People never talk about that fight with Mike Tyson because they say, oh yeah, prime.
Jake Paul has broken his silence after the fight, updating fans on X following surgery. He wrote, "Just got out of surgery. Everything went smoothly. Lots of pain and stiffness. Liquids only for 7 days. Huge thanks to the team at Miami University Hospital." Respect poured in as fans realized how serious the damage was. Analyst Wade weighed in, saying Jake fought without the pressure of defending belts, chasing big money matchups instead. He admitted Jake was nowhere near AJ's level in size, power, speed, or endurance, but still gave him credit for stepping into elite heavyweight danger. Wade believes future money fights are still there if Jake commits, even calling the event a spectacle for boxing, despite the brutal outcome.
2026, and I don't think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive, massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight. As far as, what happened in there tonight, I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever. And then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July, or it's their birthday, or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that here. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say, oh, for the money.
Former influencer Zayn reacted to the shocking update about Jake Paul's condition with disbelief and concern. Posting online, he wrote, "Jake Paul announces he has a double jaw fracture, snapped, and may never be able to fight again. AJ broke Jake Paul's jaw. Anthony Joshua did him dirty. That's terrible." Jake Paul's recent defeat to Anthony Joshua has indeed resulted in a serious injury, with reports confirming he suffered a broken jaw. Medical experts say the damage is severe enough to sideline him from boxing for at least a year. A double jaw fracture requires prolonged rest, rehabilitation, and close medical monitoring to avoid long-term complications, forcing Jake to put all fighting plans on hold. Fans and analysts have expressed growing concern, emphasizing that a fighter's health must come first, especially after such a brutal loss. Jake has since shared updates on his condition, thanking his medical team and acknowledging the pain and restrictions he now faces. With a broken jaw, training and competition are not possible, making full recovery the top priority. This injury marks a major pause in Jake Paul's boxing career.
That thought that the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged, these x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Cassia Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total, twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul, compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the 2nd professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward, skipping the post-fight press conference, probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, that dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes some serious...
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Majuri joined CBS Sports to dissect Jake Paul's recent fight, offering detailed insight into his strategy and overall performance. They observed that Paul leaned heavily on elusiveness, constantly circling, staying mobile, and avoiding the corners, which helped him last longer than many expected. However, both analysts questioned how Paul could realistically challenge for a cruiserweight title without engaging more assertively against elite-level opponents. Campbell, speaking from Missouri, suggested that Paul's long-term sustainability in boxing may rely more on his star power than pure skill. He pointed to potential blockbuster bouts, such as a showdown with KSI or a rematch with Tommy Fury, as the most viable and profitable paths forward. They also emphasized that Paul's defensive, evasive approach, along with his preference for a larger 22-foot ring, signals that entertainment value and fan interest may currently outweigh any immediate pursuit of true championship-level ambition.
Be the end for him in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a two-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul, and we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva and Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
That wraps up today's video. Stay tuned for more. See you in the next one.